Welcome to the Film Mechanics Screenwriting Podcast with Deri Tyton. Every character has a story to tell. What is character? The moment you realize that every character has a story to tell, the sooner you will be able to write your masterpiece. What is this masterpiece that I speak of? I'm speaking about the person or the thing in your story. The person or the thing that leads your story. Why we plop down our money and sit in a dark room with a bucket of popcorn and a pop and watch. Character or characters. Not only does each character has a story, but they also have their own set of characteristics. This is the design, the makeup, the creation of their physical, social, physiological, psychological, and emotional blueprint. So many things to think about when you're writing about a character, right? When you just want to write a story about like a woman who wins the lottery, a man who wins a marathon, a battle over who controls the sun on the earth. I don't know. That's crazy, I know. We still have to ask who this individual is or who these individuals are. What do they represent in my story? In the grand scheme of things, they are the ones to tell this story. Well, they are the ones we picked. But again, what do we know about them? Their flaws. Because you know flaws is what makes a character real. Like the woman who wins the lottery has a gambling problem. The man who wins the marathon is in the middle of a messy divorce, or the battle over the sun started because one farmer was envious of another farmer. So why do these characters have these messed up dispositions, these messed up personalities? These, go on and say it, why are they so flawed? Well, the character of man is flawed. And how did we get that way? We will have to look deep into our backstory to find out. Again, I ask, who is your main character or characters? And in order to know, the next step in the screenwriting process is to come up with a character or characters and then write a backstory on them. Wait, don't cut me off yet. I'm not done. Chill, just chill. This is not extra work for you. This is the real work. The backstory gives you the opportunity to process and prioritize the ideation and the formation of your character. So let's keep it a little simple without all the big words, right? So backstory gives you, the writer, the history of your character from the time they were conceived in your mind till the time we, the audience, meet her, him, them, it. Like, let's look at when we finally meet Darius Love Hall and Love Jones. He's already has been a poet. He's already been a poet. When we finally meet Sherman Klump and the Nutty Professor, he's already been through middle school, elementary school, high school, college. Like, we meet him right at that moment that he's a bona fide professor, right? Scientist. By the time we meet Rocky Balboa in the movie Rocky, he's already lived a hard life. Like, he's already had parents. He's already been through the rough times. He's already been a champion or semi-champion as a boxer. Thelma and Louise in their dramatic adventure film. They've already lived a life that they were trying to get away from, get out of, right? They've already had children. They've already experienced marriage. They've already experienced, the fun times, of being a teenager or the hardships of being a young woman. And each of these characters have a backstory. While writing a backstory, the information we come up with can be utilized when you write the screenplay. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be in the exposition of the character or by the character. What is necessary is this exercise of writing a backstory for your character helps bring the character to life in the mind of the writer. Many writers write characters that can be acted out. The goal of the character is to exist in real life, as real as our minds can conceive it. These characters are living a life on life terms. We write to show the character of the human on the page and then on the screen. One of the most important questions I get asked all the time is, who do I write a backstory for? The most honest answer I can give to that question is, do a backstory for all the people who mean the most to the story and will have the deepest impact on your story. And since everyone doesn't do well with writing lengthy backstories, and if you're that kind of person, you can always go online and find a character analysis worksheet. This worksheet will help you develop your character as well. It's just different, that's all. It'll ask you questions like, what's your character's birthday? Who are their parents? What is their favorite or least favorite foods? What is their favorite music? What is their best memory from high school? What is their least favorite memory from their childhood? So I think you get the drift of what I'm saying. The facts will help you. But what about those characters that are in your story that you don't want to write a backstory for? The ones with the minimal roles that round out the entire cast. You could use archetypes for those. An archetype is a prototype, an original model that serves as an inspiration, right? So let's look at a couple archetypes that you might remember. An archetype character is the sidekick, like Robin of Batman and Robin, or Watson, Sherlock and Watson, right? Sherlock Holmes and Watson. What about something like the handsome jock, or the ditzy cheerleader, or the stoic mentor, the quirky professor, the childish rebel? Like, those are archetypes. And I mean, there are so many more, but what's important is the use of these archetypes can be very comforting. I mean, stop overthinking characters to the point where you don't get any work done. Use archetypes, seriously. Like, recreate them and tailor them to your story. Now, we have the historical and physical makeup, but what about the character's voice, their perspective on things? What is your protagonist's voice? What is your antagonist's voice? Not their physical voice that you hear, like the one you're hearing from me, but what is their inner voice that tells us, the audience, what they believe, what they value? What makes them joyful, prideful, angry? What do they love? The voice. The perspective is given to your characters from your own values, ideas, beliefs. It's kind of like alchemy. It's synergy. It all works together. It's organic, right? But before we move on, let's just say this. You may write about things that you do not agree with or believe in your life, but the information or research can be based on helping mold an antagonist's point of view. I'm going to give you an example. The mother of Antoine Fisher, in the story Antoine Fisher. You may not believe that's how you talk to children or raise children, but there are mothers that have that kind of temperament regarding how they see their children. You may not see yourself as a psychotic killer who doesn't have a moral compass, but the writer of Halloween wrote her film that way. So although you may not agree with a certain way of life, idea, action, or thought, you can still write about it. But your character should be seen as real. They should feel real. Real as you hear my voice. The best movies have perspective. Relatable perspective. Once you give a character's perspective, we have to give them journeys, goals, somewhere to go. And when I ask the question, where does every screenplay begin? Quite often the answer should be the end. Now, everyone is not going to say the end. Not everyone will know how their screenplay will end. That's because every process is different. But for the sake of argument, let's say you're learning your own process on writing screenplays. The best way to go about it in terms of writing a screenplay is to start at the end. Where do you want your main protagonist or protagonists to end up physically? Will the girl get the guy? Will the world be saved? Will the family come together? It sounds familiar, right? Sounds like the major dramatic question. But in this case, you provide the actual answer. Now you're thinking, what if I want to change my ending, Deri? You can. Nothing is etched in stone to the point where your writing can't be flexible. Be flexible in your writing, not your process. And when you're in the pre-writing component, you want to give your characters two journeys: the outer journey, the inner journey. The outer journey is when your character seeks out a physical thing, like Darius Love Hall character in Love Jones went after Nina, the love interest. She's real. Dorothy sought out the Wizard of Oz to go home. The wizard is real. When Stoney and Cleo and Frankie and TT from Set It Off robbed banks, they were getting money, something that we can actually see. What we found out about all of these movies, they had a clear-cut external goal or outer journey that we can follow. So what happens when a character's outer journey traverses across the landscape of your screenplay with an inner journey, an internal goal? The inner journey is where your character goes through an emotional transformation. Normally when I write, I would create an emotional map for my character, like in the beginning process. When I'm structuring the outer journey, I'm actually mapping out the emotional map of my character. So where do we begin? Exactly at the end. Where do we want the character to emotionally end up? Let's say, do we want them happy, relieved, important, free? A quick tidbit of how I normally would do my process or my emotional mapping. I use the 7 stages of grief. I may use the stages of addiction recovery. I may use the 4 stages of happiness. All I know is there are moments where I choose a pathway to help me map out what the desired effect I want for my characters. This helps in the highs and the lows of my protagonist and my antagonist that they will experience, that I want them to experience. If I want my character to end up hopeful and strong-willed, then when the audience meet them, they have a hopeless and weak disposition. I want Darius Love Hall to see love as something that's easy, but his transformation will lead him into understanding that maintaining a love affair requires work. I want Stoney and Set It Off to discover certainty. So in the beginning, we may introduce her as someone who is struggling and worried about everything in her life. Her transformation will lead her from worry to despair to understanding to certainty. Through each of these emotional stages, she learns a lot about herself. There are movies where characters don't go through an emotional transformation. They just have what is called like a physical arc. Okay, like a movie like Forrest Gump, right? We see him from a child to an older man, but he doesn't change emotionally. Nino Brown, like he doesn't change emotionally. He is who he is. Michael Myers, like he doesn't change. In Halloween, he doesn't change. This doesn't mean that the film wasn't good. It's just that it allows more room for other characters to grow, to go through the changes that can give your film such a dynamic perspective. These transformations are called character arcs. What's a character arc? The transformation of a character takes place over the course of a film. Although Forrest Gump didn't go through a full emotional transformation, but the character Jenny did. Remember, she appears as a cute, helpful girl and turns out to be a bad girl, and in her dying days she asks Forrest to forgive her. She returns back to her original helpful self. Yes, character arcs are necessary because we as humans experience them. There are times when your main protagonist and antagonist may not go through some lofty, exuberant change, and that's okay. Your story is your story, and you can write it any way you want. But if you want a well fleshed out story, then some of the things I discussed in this podcast will help you get there. Thanks for joining us, and always be writing. We appreciate your support. Be sure to leave a review and a comment. and share with your closest screenwriting friends. Stop by www.derityton.com for the Film Mechanics Screenwriting Workbook, and we'll see you next episode. Have an awesome day. Peace.